When you think of the Mario franchise, your mind goes around with a lot of games, whether it's mainline or spin-off titles, with the latter being something Mario has a lot of under his belt. He's been in racing games, sports titles, and even a lot of RPGs over the years. I mean heck, there has been even some series where other Mario characters get to shine in the spotlight. From Luigi, Wario, Yoshi, and most recently Princess Peach. But out of all the Mario spin-off series, the one that has to be the most recognizable right next to Mario Kart itself has to be the Mario Party series. Where for every Nintendo console, there were at least multiple Mario Party games for each one of them. With the N64 having about 3 of them, while the GameCube had freaking 4 of them, which honestly is where the series peaked in my opinion, with new games coming out every year. And what was very neat is that despite this yearly release monocle for about a few years, it still kept the quality consistent. And man, I've gotta say, when I was very young, I always thought the Mario Party series was probably the coolest thing imaginable, as I was able to play through all the GameCube titles plus Mario Party 8 on Wii. So yeah, at the time the Mario Party series was basically very beloved by fans. But eventually in 2006, Nintendo released the Nintendo Wii, and with that came with the main gimmick of the console, the motion controls, which basically turned the Wii into a runaway success for all the casual players, with one of the biggest genres for that system has to be party games. Lots, and I mean lots of party games. And so while a lot of third-party developers try to get all of that Wii money, this was also the generation where the Mario Party series changed massively. As after 2007, Hudson Soft just suddenly stopped working on the series, as we wouldn't see another Mario Party game for about 5 years. And when we did finally got it, it was a massive change to the series, where instead of being a much more traditional board game, it's basically a car ride board game? That's because after the commercial success of Mario Party DS and that one Mario Party game with a slur in it, the developers of the Mario Party series decided to move out of Hudson Soft and into an in-house studio with Nintendo, with their relocation landing right directly into ND Cube's arms. Which at the time wasn't really a studio that had much under its belt, as it was basically formed by a collaborative team effort with Nintendo and another company called Dentsu. And after a couple of really niche games, including one of them being an F-Zero title for the GBA, they kind of just stopped making games altogether, as a lot of their pitches from Nintendo didn't really work out very well. But yeah, this was the studio that the Mario Party developers move on to, with their first ever game under a brand new studio name being Wii Party. I've never actually played this game before, but it's basically what you see, what you get. And this all leads us to Mario Party 9 and its brand new gameplay loop. My biggest guess on why they did this is that since they are under a brand new studio name, they wanted to try something a bit new to the series. Because keep in mind, even though this was the first ever Mario Party game under ND Cube's belt, the developers, more specifically the director of the series, was working with the same gameplay formula for about a few years now. But what really irked the original fans of the series is that while this game was in development, the original studio that they were working at, Hudson Soft, was bought and dissolved into Konami. But I should really bring up the fact that even if Hudson Soft was still around and was never bought by Konami, ND Cube would have still been the main developers of the series going forward, as the whole migration process happened a few years before the Hudson Soft buyout. But as for my personal history of this game, years ago when I was like 9 or something, this was when I was a bit more familiar with the internet, where I was pretty much watching random stuff online. Until one day around June while I was on YouTube, something suddenly popped on my feed, which was the first ever trailer for Mario Party 9. Now I have to say is that, as I mentioned earlier, I was a massive fan of the Mario Party series. I always thought these games were just stupidly fun. So when I first saw this trailer years ago, I was pretty surprised on the boards being focused on driving a car, which I'll say that at the time I was a bit more welcoming with this new idea compared to others. And when it finally released, I did have a good time, but then a few years afterwards and after more and more mediocre Mario Party games, it did cause me to have a bit of a distaste for Mario Party 9, especially with 10. But despite that, I still had a lot of great memories playing through this game, even if it's very different from the past Mario Party games. But since the Mario Party series had one big of a comeback during the Switch era, with probably the biggest game in the series coming out this October, I was very curious on how much I would still enjoy Mario Party 9, will be good, bad, you'll read the title so you probably know what I think about this game. But with everything out of the way, let's get started.
Yeah! Yahoo!
Alright, so booting up the game, we agreed to the title screen that reminds me a lot of the one from Mario Party 8, except a lot more vibrant with this starry night. Even the main menu of this game looks really good, with Mario looking up the sky with this telescope, while other people are just running around. And even the character roster isn't too shabby. We have some of the usual mainstays, but we also have a mix of brand new characters like Koopa, Shy Guy, and Kamek. But for this video, I'm going to be sticking with Yoshi as he's been my main character for every single Mario game. But alright, so for this video, I played about 2 rounds for each of the boards, with one of them being in single player mode, while the other one is pretty much in regular multiplayer mode. With single player, it's one continuous adventure going through all the boards, while having a bit of a story. So let's go over that real quick, because there really isn't that much to it. So the story begins on a shooting star festival when suddenly, Bowser appears using this machine to suck all the stars in the sky. And now it's up to Mario and Co to travel across different parts of the land to stop Bowser and rescue all the mini-stars. And along the way, Bowser has 2 of his henchmen, Shy Guy and Magic Koopa, to try and stop them. It's basically your typical Mario story, it's just a reason to stop Bowser and such. Although I do have to admit, Bowser's motivation on why he's doing this is kind of funny. As after he's defeated, he states that he wanted to use the mini-stars to decorate his castle. Which is honestly so dumb, I love it. Alright, so jumping all the way to gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, Mario Party 9 is the biggest shakeup in the series yet. Gone from the original gameplay style where characters get to move individually, the boards this time has been converted into a massive road trip with different vehicles within the boards. Which is why I tried to avoid using Daisy during my playthroughs, because out of all the characters, she has the largest hit and run list. Now how this gameplay works is that for every player's turn they have to roll a dice to move further into the board. And along the way, you need to collect as many mini-stars as much as you can before the board ends, which are the replacements for stars and coins with plenty of ways to get them. With some of them pretty much on the road, and the only way to get them is to drive through them while it's your turn. Or you can land on various lucky spaces to get a good chance to get about 5 mini-stars. And then there's these captain events that makes you do a small little challenge to get a huge chunk of mini-stars as well, with the captain in charge being the one who sets up the whole minigame. But in terms of something like an actual strategy, this is when the different items comes into play. As throughout the boards, you'll be able to encounter these various blue spaces. Now in past games they basically give you coins, but in Mario Party 9, they'll give you a special dice block. And with these, you have a certain amount of range of numbers you can go through, like for example, if you're trying to avoid something that's hazardous on the board, you're probably going to be using the 1-3 dice block to avoid losing your mini-stars. But if there's something like 8 mini-stars on the road and you want to get them, you might as well use the 4-6 dice block just to get a likelihood of actually getting them. Honestly, in terms of actual functionality, these items work pretty well for what kind of board game this is. Even though design-wise, these items don't really hold a candle compared to past Mario Party items, like the plunger chests, the various capsules from the GameCube games, or that one skeleton key that people wants to fuck for some reason. Honestly, the vehicle idea Mario Party 9 has is very decent for the most part, but is it better than the original Mario Party gameplay? No, not at all. But as its own thing, I feel like it works mostly depending on which board you go through. More specifically, the ones that have a unique gimmick from one another. As something like the very first board in this game is definitely the worst one because it's probably the most vanilla board in the game. With the only thing I can remember from this area is this one section where everyone needs to roll a certain amount of numbers. But as for boards that do work, I feel like Bob-omb's Factory is a good example, where the first part is very simple as it focuses on these conveyor belts. But this board gets very interesting when we head to the second part, where the main focus is on this Bob-omb, where it's basically strapped down to the vehicle and it counts down every time someone moves a space. And once it counts all the way down, it'll explode in front of the captain who's driving, losing half of their mini-stars. So now the various dice blocks you'll be collecting along the way serves a very important purpose when it comes to a strategy, as you can use a special dice block to low roll numbers to avoid getting exploded, or if the Bob-omb's number is high enough, you could be a total dick and use a 4-6 dice block to screw over the opponents by rolling a higher number. Then there's something like Boo's Horror Mansion, with the main gimmick here being Boo's constantly chasing you around the area. And if they do catch up to you, they will take away half your mini-stars. And so you need to plan things out by avoiding the Boos as much as possible. But as for my favorite board in this game, this has to be Magma Mine. As the whole gimmick of this board is that lava is slowly rising up and you need to race all the way up to the top to avoid getting hit by the lava. And along the way, there's these hazardous spaces throughout the board that'll cause the lava to rise faster. and even different paths that can cause the player to go for a much more longer route, raising the chances of them getting hit by lava. And again, if you do get hit by lava, you will lose half your mini-stars. And honestly, I feel like a penalty this severe is the reason why I feel like these gimmicks work. As if they lose something like 5 mini-stars, for example, I feel like the boards wouldn't be as engaging because losing half of your mini-stars mean that there's higher stakes of losing the game. Especially with the other ways you can lose mini-stars as well, like the Bowser Jr. spaces, where you alongside with another person need to play a Bowser Jr. minigame. If you lose, you'll lose 5 mini-stars, but if you win, you'll gain 5 mini-stars. And then there's the Bowser spaces, which are something you don't really see that much within the boards unless you go to the near end where they're suddenly everywhere. And with these, they pretty much work the same way as Bowser shows up to do some punishment for the player. Which is basically something like making you play a minigame, otherwise you'll lose half your mini-stars. And then there's these weird reverse minigames that he does, where you're able to gain mini-stars if you end up in last place. Which is an idea that's honestly very stupid, but I honestly love at the same time. Because the moment you start the minigame, you're just like,
take me, sweet dad!
Alright, the minigames. So just like how the board is structured very differently, how we actually get to the minigames is also very different as well. As unlike past games where every time everyone does their turn you get to a minigame instantly, this time you have to land on either a versus space or get a minigame unlocked via the blue space. And whoever wins the minigame will get a good chunk of mini-stars. And as for the minigames themselves, well, they're honestly very solid for the most part, and a really good improvement from Mario Party 8. With the big issue with that game is that since it was heavily relying on the motion control gimmicks, a lot of the minigames there felt a bit tacky, like they were only made just for shaking the Wii remote. But jumping all the way to Mario Party 9, most of the minigames here feel way more natural with the motion controls. And what also helps is that they don't rely aggressively with the motion controls as well compared to early Wii games. Like for example, in Mario Party 8, there was a minigame called Flip the Chimp, which is a very slow minigame where you have to have a Yukiki slowly climb up this pole. And while he climbs, you need to flip him left and right to avoid the coconuts, otherwise he'll slow down. But jumping all the way to Mario Party 9, we have a very similar minigame called Chain Events, where you need to flip the characters left and right and avoid the objects, otherwise they'll slow down. But the difference is that this minigame is much more faster paced, meaning that the faster you go, the much more tricky it is to dodge the objects. But I think some of my favorite minigames in Mario Party 9 has to be something like Polar Extreme, because it's a fun little platforming section where you need to avoid the icy waters. Peak Precision is a simple climbing minigame where you need to press the buttons the right time, but its simple gameplay makes it very fun to try to climb up as fast as you can. Pizza Me Mario is a simple minigame where you try to get all of your toppings on every single slice, and also this minigame gets bonus points for that hilariously cheesy pun. And then there's Goomba Bowling, a simple minigame where you're trying to knock out as many Goombas as possible, but man, it feels very good when you hit a high score in this pace. Frankly, even though this game has a lot of great minigames, the only thing I do find a bit weird is that when it comes to other types of minigames like 1v3, it's a bit more scarce compared to the free-for-all ones you're going to be seeing a lot. Doubly so for 2v2 minigames as they are completely absent. But in its place, we do have a completely new type of minigame, which are the bosses. As when you head to the middle and end of the boards, you'll be fighting a different boss. In single player mode, the bosses you'll be fighting will be prefixed, but in something like a regular multiplayer mode, you get to choose different bosses yourselves. And honestly, fighting these bosses is pretty fun for the most part. You're going to be teaming up with your opponents to take these enemies down, but at the same time, you're still competing trying to get as much points as you can. Especially when the boss's health is very low, as if you're able to get the final blow, you'll get a few bonus points as well. And whoever wins will get a huge chunk of mini-stars, which will probably help you if you're in second place and need that one last push. And frankly, most of the boss minigames here are pretty solid, except for maybe probably both Bowser and Bowser Jr. because their boss fights are pretty much relying on these dice blocks. But if you're a big fan of playing through these bosses, you can always try out something like the Boss Rush mode. I haven't unlocked this yet because it requires a huge amount of Mario Party points. But based on gameplay I've seen online, yeah, it's basically what you get, a Boss Rush. Spider-Man! Okay, so this does not have to do anything about the game itself, but I do gotta say something weird about this game's legacy. As despite this game being one of the most controversial games in the series, it is also somehow the most popular game in the series online. As there are countless videos on YouTube with millions of views, and the thumbnail is literally the exact same minigame. And this is not even going with the various mods I've seen online because some of them can be just freaking weird. Hey, Kermit the Frog here, and today I'm gonna beat the shit out of Mike Wazowski! Now as for the visuals of Mario Party 9, when this game first released in 2012, this was the final Mario game for the Nintendo Wii. And honestly, for a Wii game that released at the near end of its life, this game looks really good for the console. As it's full of vibrant colors, all the environments look pretty clean, and the character models in this game and the animations looks very stellar. With the only issue I could think of with this game's graphics is that some of the areas, especially with the grassy plains, does lean a bit too far in that new Super Mario Bros. Aesthetic, especially with some of the boards like Toad's Road for example, which is an issue that Mario games had, especially during the Wii U era. But I do feel like some of the areas does have a bit more of originality to it to kind of balance things out a bit. Like with some of the areas like Boban's Factory, Blooper Beach, and Bowser's Station. They even threw in a Donkey Kong theme board that's heavily based on Donkey Kong Country Returns, with music that fits right in perfectly with that game. Which brings me to the soundtrack as well, because honestly the music here is pretty good. I don't think it's as memorable as past Mario Party games, but honestly for what it is, I still had a really good time listening to it. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but my favorite music in this game is easily Bowser Jr.'s battle theme. Just listen to this track too, it's just a jam. Alrighty, so to wrap things up, I thought it'd be fun to just look through the extra stuff in this game. As I mentioned a minute ago, you can actually earn currency by playing through this game. And with this, you can purchase multiple things in the museum, like different vehicles for your boards. You can unlock different modes, like the aforementioned Donkey Kong board and Boss Rush mode. And most interestingly, you can actually buy these special constellations that have special description, which basically describe the character that it's based off of. And then there's the extra minigames. Now of these, we have a couple of minigames that are mostly single player based, and also the only 2v2 minigame in Mario Party 9. And then finally we have Perspective Mode, which is basically a small little gauntlet against various minigames, but with a different camera angle to make things harder. Honestly, some of these minigames does add a bit of a decent challenge, but some of them can be a bit disorienting, especially with something like Pianta Pool. And then there's Loggerheads that basically turns this game into 85% of modern Sony's library. But yeah, that was Mario Party 9, and overall, honestly it was pretty alright for the most part. It may not be a game that everyone would want out of a Mario Party game, but for what it did, I feel like it did a decent enough job of trying something unique with the series. Even though that we're in a much more better direction with the series with Mario Party Superstars and very soon Mario Party Jamboree, I still look back to something like Mario Party 9 and just say, yeah, this was a decent good time still. Although I will say is that this game will definitely not be everyone. I wouldn't blame you if you're not really big on the car mechanic. But at the same time, I do understand why people would still like this game, especially if it's a game that they grew up with. Even though in recent years, stuff like this does cause a bit of more of a discourse online, especially with the Mario side of things, which leads to certain behaviors that I'm not really big on at all. Like, I don't really agree with this mindset of shunning people for just simply liking a game, and just claiming that they accept mediocrity. Now, am I trying to say that Mario Party 9 is the best Mario Party game in the series? Nope, not at all, because I honestly think the GameCube lineup and most of the N64 games are way better. But I will say I do like this game more than something like Mario Party 10, Super Mario Party, and probably Mario Party 1 as well. I still really like Mario Party 1, I just feel like it was a bit more janky compared to other games. Which is something I couldn't say the same thing with Mario Party 9. It may be flawed in a lot of areas, but I still had a very fun time, which I feel like is important for a party game. But as for the other NDQ games over the years, I will say I'll probably make a video of these games one of these days, although I probably won't be as interested compared to something like Mario Party 9. But I will say is that they have really knocked out of the park during the Switch era, and I'm very excited to play through Mario Party Jamboree. But as for the next video, we're going to be heading back to the Mario RPG series when we continue on with our Mario & Luigi Marathon. So the next time we'll be here, we'll be talking about Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, the most acclaimed game in the series. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!